Hello, Master Gary Hernandez here, and I'm with some of my students. I'm with 16-year-old Taylor, 11-year-old Isabel, and 9-year-old Billy. And I'm doing a quick video here because I was talking to some school owners, and one guy I know, he's fairly new to owning a school, and he's had a little problem. He was asking me questions about proper ways to handle kids and young girls, moving them around in your school. Now, I have Master Karuna as my partner, so obviously when we go to handle the girls or move some of the ladies around, I'll have her do that. But when you're still an adult handling kids, there's a proper way to touch them and not touch them. And I'm sure most martial arts school owners know that. But it's also, if you don't and haven't had a chance to work with your instructors, you may want to get with them on that, because down the road some problems can develop. Okay, now one of the things you want to know is when you're moving a younger person. Now, as an adult, even with women in my adult class, there's certain ways I want to move them. One of the things, when I have a boy, like Billy here, I can put my hands on his shoulders, and I can turn and I can direct him around. You know, I can, obviously I'm not going to choke him, but I can move him around a little bit, stuff like just like this. Billy's got his hands on his chest. You know, I can grab his hands, I can move them around, absolutely, he's a boy. But I do certain things with the boys that I'll do with the girls. Now, when you got a girl like Taylor and Isabel here, okay, if I'm going to move them, I'm actually going to have my hands out like this, and I'm going to move them like this. This is the way that I was trained to move kids. Number one, it shows that I'm not touching them improperly. I'm just going to kind of move her around a little bit like this. A lot of times, especially with your little ones, if you ask them to move over, sometimes they move an inch. So you're like, you really want to put them in a good spot, so I'm kind of just move her around like this. You know, I'm never going to want to grab them certain ways. Her hands are on her, bring them right here. Sometimes when you're trying to teach a kid to fight, their hands are here. Like I did with Billy, as a boy, you can reach out, of course you can move his hands, but what I try to do is I'll ask the girls, can you please keep your hands, bring them up to me? That way I'm getting them off their body, so I'm not reaching and doing anything inappropriate. And once their hands are clear of a certain area, then I'll move their hands. And if their hands are back here again, I'll use Taylor this time. And if you have an older girl, okay, same thing. I'll ask her, can I have your hands, please? I'll bring her hands, bring her out to me a little bit. And I'll bring her hands out, and I'll keep them away from her body. And notice I'm not right, usually. Self-defense techniques, sometimes you're going to get close with them. If you have a female instructor, that works better. But sometimes you have to have the men attack the women and vice versa with the boys, and of course you're there. But as a school owner, you got to make sure that no one's ever going to say you're doing something inappropriate. Sometimes, now I'm an old man, it doesn't happen to me, but I know guys that are in their 20s teaching schools, and you get a girl that's 17, 16, she kind of fancies the guy, and you got to watch out for stuff like that. So I'll have her bring her hands off her body for me, and then I can adjust them. Turn around, Taylor. If her hands are still on her body, bring your hands up to your chest like that. And I'll say, can you bring your hands off your chest, please? And I'll move them around like that. And if the same thing with Taylor, I'll move her around this way. I try not to ever grab the kids. If I'm moving their heads around, I'm still certain things I'm not going to do. Unless we're doing self-defense, and I'll tell them, hey, I'm going to grab here. And there's certain things I do. You got to watch how you touch your students. And that's something that's very important. Another thing you want to do, and I'll move you over a little bit, Isabel, is when you're working with their feet. A lot of times, I don't bend down and reach down and pull their feet apart with my hands too much. I'll sit here and try to move your feet apart. Certain ways I want to move and position, especially the female girls, and I do the same with the boys a lot. I try to move them around, move their feet around if they're not going to move the way I'm asking them to. Certain ways I want them to bend their knee. I'll say, can you bend that a little bit? Same here, can you bend that please? And certain ways you want to make sure you're never touching or looking inappropriate with your students. Teenage girls, one of the things you want to, and I saw this a long time ago in a school I trained at. One thing you want to make sure, especially with all the kids, especially when they're wearing, here we have the full dobok, but we also train in our shirts, and a lot of people do that in schools. But when we're testing or tournaments, we're wearing a full dobok. Very important to make sure, and most of us do that, but I have seen this at tournaments and stuff. Sometimes a female will not wear a t-shirt but have her dobok. And she may not have a dobok like this. Her dobok or her gi may be a wraparound. Granted, she's wearing something underneath, more of a sports type top, but still inappropriate at times, especially when you're in class stretching and you've got teenage girls that, I will say this, get a little developed over their age and they look a little older than they are. Taylor, would you do me a favor, start to stretch and then hands to the floor. So when you got a girl bent over like this, and if she's not wearing a t-shirt and her dobok, it can open up. I have seen that happen. It's not something you want to have at your school. It's something you definitely don't want to have ever at your school or at tournaments. Can you come on up, Taylor? Thank you. So you want to make sure that you cover that. Your instructors are covering that with their students. You guys are obviously covering that with your students. And again, how you position kids. And also when you're moving them, you don't want to, I'm going to push Billy a little hard here. You never want to jerk him around too hard, nothing like that. During self-defense, we will do certain grabs and takes, but we're letting them know what's going to happen. I have seen some schools where they kind of snatch them around and they jerk them super hard. That's not a good thing to do also. It kind of sends a bad message out there. I let parents watch. I never let them interact with the classes, but I'm one of these guys where I like the parents to sit there. Why? When you start having girls that are getting older, or I like to make sure I have people out there so I can never have a false accusation that I can touch somebody inappropriately or something like that. I used to teach for the Hillsborough County Rec Centers, and they would literally send in somebody to question the parents how I was teaching. So I've had that happen, and of course I always taught professional and appropriate. But just to give you guys a heads up, and a lot of you know this, but like I said, this came up between me and two other guys, and one of them wasn't sure how to handle moving around young girls. He was just putting his hands like this on them, moving them like this, reaching in, something you don't want to do. Again, my hands, I always have my palms out when I move them. If they're not going to be able to move, I'll say, Taylor, can you step over here? Let's say Taylor's not moving for some reason. Then I'll say, Taylor, I need you here. And again, my palms are out, my hands are out. So nothing is in a proper area, and everything is professional. So I want to thank Taylor, Isabel, and Billy for helping me with this. All right, thank you, Master Gary Hernandez.